Welcome, everybody. We are going to do our thing, have yet another great late night stream, and we're hitting the streets around the country tomorrow to say no to war with Iran. Let's go.
Of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. And now is the time for our organization, an anti-imperialist organization, to go out and do our thing. Because at this point, as you can see, there is a very real danger of the United States attacking Iran. And the Center for Political Innovation has put out a call, and I've been on the phone with people all day. And we're going to be in the streets in New York City. We're going to be in the streets in Minneapolis. We're going to be on the streets in Chicago. We're going to be on the streets in Los Angeles. We're going to be on the streets in many other cities as well. And we are going to do our best to bring an anti-war message to the American people. And I just got our big sign that, it came yesterday, the sign I ordered for New York City. And we're going to have some other things. And I've been calling different people. And we're just trying to do our best to oppose the danger of war. So if you're a member of CPI, please be in touch. Let's be in the streets. Let's get the message out there. We're having a national day of action. That is my focus, right? The danger of a new war against Iran is very real. But tonight, we're going to have yet another great live stream conversation. So if you've got a question you want me to answer in the second half of the show, send me a Rumble rant, cash at me at CalebMoppin22. But the best way to send a question is going to buymeacoffee.com and sending, go to buymeacoffee.com/CalebMoppin and send your question. You can do it anonymous. You can send a lot of different coffees. You can send as much money as you want. You can send it anonymous. You can ask a long question, a short question. It's very, very good. We'll be following our normal format. First, the opening remarks, then the roll call, then I answer questions. And, all of us are thinking about tomorrow and why we need to be out there and be in the streets. Donald Trump, is really threatening Iran and trying to get concessions out of Iran with his big talk. And we have to represent anti-imperialism in the streets of America and say no to the danger of war with Iran. Tonight I've actually prepared a slideshow that we're going to talk about CPI's methods. But yeah, if you got a question for the second half of the show, buymeacoffee.com/CalebMoppin. Best way to send your question. You can also Rumble rant me. You can also cash at me at CalebMoppin22. But tonight, as we prepare for our big day of action, being in the streets, and as everything is in motion, I thought this was a great time to go over with a slideshow the innovationist method. Think like a revolutionary, change the world. Because our organization has accomplished an astronomical event, an astronomical amount, I should say. And if you don't believe me, go to our website, go to Center for Political Innovation, cpiusa.org, and go to the About page and just start reading the timeline, right? And read about how we've observed elections in multiple countries. Read about how we've spoken with multiple presidents. Two of our members, including me, as well as Noah, have actually spoken directly with Russian President Putin at international gatherings. How we put on and organized a United Nations press conference. How we intervened in the U.S. election. We were out in the streets pushing our Peace MAGA campaign. Tonight I'm going to talk about, we have done an astronomical amount as an organization. We are a small organization. We are not huge. We don't have thousands of members, but we have accomplished a massive amount. And that's because we possess an understanding of how the world works and how you can intervene in the world. I really like, there was a slogan that the Revolutionary Union, which was a Maoist communist group in the 1970s, had. They said, if you want to change things, you've got to learn things. If you want to learn things, you've got to change things, right? And they would talk about learning while leading and leading while learning. And I think that that is absolutely the correct approach. And that comes from Mao Zedong's little red book, The Mass Line, from the masses to the masses, right? And that if you want to understand how the world works, you need to actively be involved in changing it. And if you want to change the world, you need to learn about it. You need to be in touch with reality and be learning, right? And that this is a method. And so tonight I'm going to talk about the method. What inspires us to take action? How is it that we've learned to successfully intervene in activities? Well, I am a huge fan of Wallace D. Wattles, the great Christian socialist, friend of Eugene Debs. And he said, genius is the union of man and God in the acts of the Spirit. And I like that quotation because he's describing, how when you can touch on real truth and when you can intervene in history, you are connecting with a higher power. And that may not seem obvious tonight about why that is, but I think this quote from Wallace Wattles will become, much more clear as we continue. And Frederick Engels famously said, and I come back to this, and this is core. There's a reason I repeat this over and over and over again. This is core to what the Center for Political Innovation believes and understands. The animal merely uses its environment and brings about changes in it simply by his presence. Man, by his changes, makes it serve his ends and masters it. And this is the final distinction between man and other animals. All the other animals just interact with their environment. Man forces the environment to serve him. Man has agency. Man has the ability to look at the environment and change it. And that is the story of human history, right? Tonight, we're going to be talking about it in terms of activism. How can we innovate and intervene in history and carry out successful anti-imperialist activism and, oppose things like this danger of a threat of war against Iran? How can we do that? But at the same time, this is the whole story of human history. Man was a hunter and a gatherer, and he discovered that he could use rocks to kill animals. He could use sticks to kill animals. He discovered that he could pay attention to the patterns of plant life and learn where plants grow in order to more effectively gather fruits and nuts. And he didn't just go along. He had a big picture. He assessed the situation, and he innovated by developing tools to hunt with, by developing, eventually creating fire, by eventually learning the patterns of how plants grow, and intervened in that process, led to a great scarcity, and it eventually led to the origin of agriculture. Man discovering that he could grow crops for himself, and that the whole history of human beings is the struggle of human beings to more effectively innovate and master nature and exercise their mastery over nature in order to expand their life expectancy, in order to expand their population, and to go to a higher plane, and that we innovate technologically, and that requires us to then innovate socially and then eventually politically, right? That there's a three-stage process. First, there are technological advances. Those technological advances lead to the creation of new classes, and those new classes then have to take control of the government, and that leads to the creation of new political systems, right? And this is the struggle of human history. How can we take the world around us and make it better? How can we take what is there and improve upon it? And how can we exercise agency, to exercise mastery over the environment, to force the environment to serve us more effectively? This is the entire human experience. So if you're struggling with this question, if every day you're thinking, how can I do a better job? Well, that's called being a human being. If you're asking big questions and you're wrangling with how I can take what I've got in my life and improve on it, welcome to the human race. You are a human being. That's what it means. Now, There is a prayer that is used in the Alcoholics Anonymous program. It's also used in a lot of Christian and theistic, Jewish, Muslim, settings. And it is God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And the reason that the serenity prayer sticks with people so much is because it's something that people struggle with. What can I change? What can I not change? Right? And what is it that I can develop the willpower to change? And what is it that's beyond my ability to change? And I'm just going to get frustrated if I push on it, right? How can I intervene in history effectively? Right. And this is the story of your life. Are there things in your personal life that you can change? Are there things in your life that you can change that you can't change? This applies to your individual life circumstances, your friendships, your relationships with other people, your career. It also applies to human history. It applies to greater society. How can I intervene and make the world around me better? Right. This is the human condition. Now, we have popularized the phrase living biologically because the bulk of humanity is not fulfilling this aspect of human existence. The bulk of humanity is simply living a biological existence. They are avoiding pain. They are seeking pleasure, but they are not actively trying to intervene in the world around them. They are asleep, right? And just like a rat in a maze, just goes around the corner trying to get that cheese. Right. Just like, the weeds in your garden that grow in a certain direction based on where they think they can get nourishment. Just like your cat or your dog that, barks when you walk in the door because it likes to see you because you feed them. They are not exercising real agency. They are not asking big questions. They're not taking a look at the environment and the world around them and saying, how can I intervene? They are only living biologically. And those who rule over us would like us to maintain a biological existence. And when they talk about you'll own nothing and be happy about it, you'll live in a pod and you'll eat bugs, that's what they would like. They would like to lull us to sleep so that we live biologically, and they can breed us like cattle. They can cull the herd and depopulate, and they can stay at the top forever. However, mankind is awakening, right? And the nature of mankind is to do the opposite. And we as an organization strive to awaken people to not live biologically, but rather to take on a human existence, to awaken and intervene in history. Now, a lot of young people nowadays think they're communists, right? Or maybe they don't think they're communists. They think that they're activists. They think that they're involved in politics. And one thing I have encountered over and over and over again among such young people is dual delusions. They believe two things that are false. And with these two things, they become disempowered. The first thing they believe is they think they know it all. They think they know everything because they listened to the right podcasts, because they read the right books, because they've studied, because they think they know everything. And this usually translates into what you call niche ideology, right? They're not just a communist, they're an Enver Hoxha communist. They're not just a communist, they're an ultra Maoist. They're this specific kind of Trotskyite. They have a very, very specific understanding of communism or anarchism or conservatism or religion or whatever. They think they know it all, right? They think they know everything. Well, if they knew everything, they would be putting it into practice in a way that would be changing the world. They don't know everything, but they kind of hide in this place of thinking that with their kind of book knowledge and with their internet reading, they know it all, right? And they don't need to learn from anybody and all of that. And at the same time, they think they know it all because they have read a lot of books or they've listened to a lot of podcasts or whatever. They also think there's nothing I can do. All right. And that there's just nothing we can do. And their political activism consists of listening to podcasts, leaving internet comments, voting maybe for one of the two major parties in the elections. And that's it. And they think that I've met many people, both leftists and conservatives, both, Trumpers and woke people, and that the majority of people who consider themselves to be politically active in America have the dual delusions. On the one hand, they think they know everything. And on the other hand, they think that there is nothing that they can do. They think basically, well, I can vote for the Democrats, I can vote for the Republicans, well, I can listen to podcasts, there's nothing I can do. Well, first of all, you don't know it all, because if you did know it all, you would be changing the world. But on the other hand, there is the idea that you can't do anything. There are things that you can do, right? And that the dual delusions, people that are politically inactive, they're interested in politics, they're upset about the political situation, they want to learn, but they trap themselves. One way they trap themselves is with the dual delusions. They know it all, which they don't, but there's nothing I can do. And so, the USA is about to go to war with Iran, and they are mad about it, but they think, oh, well, I don't need to work with anybody I don't already agree with, and I can't talk to this person because I know it all. I have this unique understanding of the world. But on the other hand, there's nothing I can do to stop the war against Iran. So I guess next election I vote for Trump, or next election I vote for the Democrats, or next, I leave some comments on Facebook. I make a Facebook status that I'm really mad. There's nothing I can do, but I know it all. And these dual delusions have to be broken down, right? You cannot change the world if you maintain these dual delusions. You cannot change the world if you think you know it all and you think there's nothing we can do. And the truth is, you don't know it all, because knowledge comes from correct practical experience. Knowledge comes from actually getting shit done. And you are not powerless. There are things that you can do. And as you do them, you will learn in the process, right? Learning while leading, leading while learning, right? If you want to change things, you got to learn things. You want to learn things, you got to change things. So you don't know it all, but there is something you can do, and you can learn by doing things. And as through doing things, you will learn. And this is the nature of politics, political activism, and reality. Again, read the Little Red Book by Mao Zedong and read what he wrote about the mass line. This is the mass line. Now, another block that a lot of people have is what's called a white whale. It's called a white whale. Now, I don't know if folks have ever read the classic work of literature. It's considered one of the most important novels of the 1800s. Herman Melville's book, Moby Dick. I have never read it. I know the first line of it is "Call me Ishmael." Shout out to our CPI member named Ishmael. I don't know if you were named after the book. Maybe your parents really liked it, or maybe they just got the name Ishmael from the Old Testament. But it begins with "Call me Ishmael." But it's a novel about whaling. And the main character in the novel is Captain Ahab. He's not the narrator. The narrator is Ishmael, but Captain Ahab is the main character in the novel. And Captain Ahab is a captain of a whaling ship who broke his leg trying to kill a white whale. There was a white whale, a giant whale called Moby Dick, and he was trying to kill the whale. And in the process, he broke his leg. And so Captain Ahab has spent his whole life trying to find that whale that he almost killed and get revenge on it for breaking his leg, and finally take down the white whale, Moby Dick. And it's about the tragedy of this, that Captain Ahab could have done something else with his life, could have gotten married, could have had kids, could have gotten a bunch of other whales. But he's trapped in this obsession with, if only I could just get Moby Dick, if I could only get the white whale, right? And this is a block that people get into. It's a lot like the dual delusions that I just mentioned. It's a block, and there are a million white whales for people. One of them is the Democratic Party. Have you ever heard this? We can't build a movement because we've got to take over the Democratic Party. If we could just get into the Democratic Party and get enough people in the Democratic Party, and we could vote, and we could get enough delegates that Bernie could get. No, not going to work. Another white whale, right? The labor unions, right? All kinds of people who want to be communists or want to be leftists. They don't go out and build a communist movement. What they do is they get a job at a labor union. They join a labor union where they become a hired staffer for a labor union, and they form a faction within the union, and they try to get the votes, and it's a complete waste of time. And I've known people who do this for 50, 60 years, right? And if you listen to these, if only the unions were revolutionary, if only the AFL-CIO had real revolutionary leaders, we could make a change. And they waste their entire life trying to get the union to change. Another one of these is WBAI radio station in New York City. I know this is hilarious, but I live in New York City. I know a lot of older activists, and there are many, many older activists who are very heavily involved. It's a community radio station. Members get to vote on who the director of it is. And there are so many older leftists that I've known who their entire life consists of the politics at WBAI. If only I could vote out, we could vote out the leaders of WBAI and we could get my people on. And once WBAI was putting out a revolutionary line, we'll get through. It's a complete illusion. And there was one of these groups, it was hilarious. They were convinced they were going to take over the Communist Party USA. They were going to take over the Communist Party. It was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. You can't take over the Communist Party. The Communist Party is this irrelevant, tiny sect in America. It's a tiny, tiny group, but it's somebody's property, right? It owns a stock portfolio. There's people who grew up in it, right? And they had the idea, well, we're going to maneuver and we're going to get the majority of the votes, and through their constitution and bylaws, we're going to take over the Communist Party. And I said to them, no, you're not. You're not going to do that. That's a waste of time. Build a movement. Right. And there's a million of these, right? Academia. That's another one. I know people, and I say they're interested in these revolutionary ideologies or whatever. And I say to them, all right, well, why don't you write a book and distribute it? Oh, no, I can't do that. I've just got to go to college and get my degree. And once I get my PhD, my college will help me publish a book on some obscure revolutionary leader. And I say, well, the book that you end up publishing with academia is going to be very, very boring. It's going to take you years before you end up publishing that book, and they're going to make you conform to the university to publish it. I mean, what's the point? And I see so many people, they just get trapped in a white whale. If only we could take over the labor unions. If only we could take over the Democratic Party. If only we could take over WBAI. If only we could take over the Communist Party. If only I could get into academia and I could get grant money to write a book, and then give up on that. Just do it. Just do it. You don't need anyone's permission, right? Who said that the Democrats have to support you for you to go out and build an anti-imperialist movement? Who said the labor unions have to support you? Who said WBAI has to give you a spot on the radio? Who said that you have to take over the Communist Party before you can do anything? Who said that academia, you have to get your PhD, you have to get a professorship, you have to become a professor at a university and get certified as a professor? Nobody. You don't have to do any of this, right? And I see so many people who get caught up in this. Well, I'm going to infiltrate some institution, or I'm going to get involved in this long-term 3D chess game to try and take over some institution that belongs to the enemy, right? Because that's the Democratic Party belongs to the enemy. The labor unions belong to the enemy. WBAI, I mean, it's a great radio station. I will go on it many times, but it ain't my property. And, if they have me on, great. But it's not my property. I'm not going to say it's the enemy, but it's not revolutionary territory. They just have me on occasionally. The Communist Party is run by the enemy, run by the Democrats and the FBI. Academia is definitely run by the enemy. So rather than getting in, all kinds of people get caught up in a white whale trying to take over some institution. Don't, right? And this is a problem of what you call executive function, right? And again, it's not just politics. We're talking about politics here, but we're really talking, this is all politics, but I'm talking living biologically. This is a problem in real life, right? It's, it's a real life problem. Great example. This is my favorite. I have two stories here of an old roommate I had, who I think, well, anyway, I'm not going to get into, I'm not going to get into the specifics of my old roommate, but my old roommate, there were two examples of him and his inability to act, right? One example was that, my old roommate, he lived with me, and I had a girlfriend in college, right? And my girlfriend and I, we decided we were going to start exercising, right? The college had a gym. My girlfriend and I said, you know what? We should go exercise once a week. And we made the mistake of telling my roommate this. Now, my roommate, keep in mind, was not in the best physical shape himself, but that didn't really matter. We made the mistake of telling my roommate that we were going to start exercising. And my roommate said, oh, no, you can't do that. You have to make an exercise plan. And I said to my roommate, no, we don't. I mean, maybe that'll come, but I think the first step is we got to get to the gym. No. You've got to make an exercise plan. And I said, no, I think we should go to the gym. And once we've gotten there, as we get used to it, we can, no, you've got to make an exercise plan. And he insisted, and he showed us on the internet places where, if you don't work out in exactly the right way, it doesn't help and all of this. So he came up with this long, complicated schedule he made for me and my girlfriend of like, you must go to the gym at this time, and then you must do this. And he made this whole big plan for me and my roommate, or me and my girlfriend. Did we ever go to the gym? No, we did not. And it's like, in theory, maybe this plan that he made of you got to exercise in this specific way and you've got to do it this way, maybe that would have been better if we'd ever done it. We weren't going to do it, right? The first step in starting to exercise is going to the gym. And if you never actually go to the gym, that counts for a lot less than if you have a really elaborate plan, but you never implement it. If you never actually go to the gym, that doesn't count for anything. If you go to the gym and you do it in the wrong way at first, but you gradually do it better, that's obviously fine. But if you never actually get to the gym, no matter how good that, plan that he drew up for us, this like complicated Google draft thing, he insisted, oh no, you're going to go exercise. You got to do it this way. And we never went and exercised. Right. And this was an example. This is a problem of executive function, right? Of, we never actually did it. My roommate also, and this was very annoying to me because we were sleeping in the same room. Every semester, he scheduled an 8 a.m. class, 8 a.m. And his alarm would go off and he would push the snooze button and he would miss so many of his 8 a.m. class, he would end up dropping the class. And I would say to him at the end of the semester, don't schedule an 8 a.m. class this semester, because last semester you scheduled your class at 8 a.m. You didn't wake up on time. You missed so many of the classes, you had to drop the class. So just don't schedule an 8 a.m. class, right? Schedule a 10 a.m. class, but don't schedule an 8 a.m. class, because we went through this last semester and you ended up dropping. And every semester, though, he would schedule an 8 a.m. class. If I can't learn to get up on time, why I'm not? And I would say to him, okay, but we went through this last semester and you didn't get there. And it was, and he wasn't going to do anything different. He didn't have a new plan for how to make himself get out of bed. He didn't have a new sleep schedule. It was just, I'm with willpower, I'm going to make myself get up and be on time to my 8 a.m. class. And he wouldn't do it. Every semester, he wouldn't do it. And he wasn't learning anything. He was just repeating the same cycle. This is executive functioning, right? This is called executive function, right? It's the inability to make a plan and carry it out, right? And it's a big problem. And it's called neurosis, right? Freudian psychoanalysis, which we're talking about. Freudian psychoanalysis basically argues that mental illness and mental health is rooted in the way human beings understand patterns, right? And that the most common form of mental illness is called neurosis. And it's where you repeat mistakes in your life and you don't learn from them. That's that cliche we've always heard about, insanity is when you do the same thing over and over again and never learn, right? It's the idea of you're making a mistake in your life, you're making errors and you're not learning from them, right? That's what neurosis is that there are patterns in your life that you are not noticing, you're not learning from the world around you, and as a result you continue to make the same mistakes. That everyone is neurotic. Everyone watching is neurotic, right? It is just part of the human condition. You can be more neurotic or less neurotic, but everyone's somewhat neurotic. Psychosis, neurosis is normal. Psychosis is not. Psychosis is the opposite problem. Psychosis is, it's not that there are patterns in your life that you're not noticing. You are inventing false patterns that are not there in order to make the world make more sense, right? And psychotic people are hearing voices that are not there. They are, believing, believing they're talking to demons, or believing that there's a conspiracy against them that's not happening, or they are believing things and they are processing, their ability to process information is messed up. And it's generally an attempt to protect themselves from a huge amount of stress and pain, right? They're in a huge amount of stress, they're in a huge amount of pain, and so their brain just starts inventing things that are not there and creating narratives and patterns that aren't actually there as a way of protecting them. It's a defense mechanism. And that's people that are schizophrenic, people that are, hearing voices, and people that, think that they're being followed on the street by the Illuminati or whatever, right? We all met those people. It's very sad. I had two roommates, or two people in my life, one roommate and one coworker that became psychotic as I worked with them, and I watched them collapse into psychosis. And that's why that really changed the way I thought about mental health, right? We think about people being mentally ill as like, he's depressed, he's anxious. That's not mental illness. That's neurosis. Everyone's depressed a little bit. Everyone's anxious a little bit. People have patterns in their life, but psychosis, that there's a line that it gets crossed. And when someone is actually psychotic, you can, like, that's the homeless person walking down the street talking to themselves or talking to people that are not there. That's people that are just not in touch with reality. There's a big difference between neurosis and psychosis, right? And that's something that Sigmund Freud brilliantly pointed out, right? And it's rooted in this problem of executive functioning, this problem of not being able to learn from your environment. It's like kind of coming back to that mantra. If you want to change things, you got to learn things. You want to learn things, you got to change things, right? And that neurosis is you're not learning. There's a pattern that you should be learning from, and you're not learning from it. That's the human condition, right? But psychosis is when you're just, the world around you is completely, you're oblivious to it. You have something going on in your head. You have a narrative going on in your head, and you've completely checked out of reality. And that narrative is invented to protect you, right? It's something your mind is doing to protect you from a huge amount of pain and anxiety and stress. And, it's sad. But that's what psychosis is, right? Now, Sigmund Freud also touched on this in another aspect, right? Which is that basically, when you're a baby, when you're born, a baby believes itself to be all powerful, because all a baby has to do to get fed is cry. A baby doesn't have to do anything for itself, right? It cries, it gets its diaper changed, it gets rocked to sleep, it gets taken care of. And as a baby, you experience a phase called infantile omnipotence. As a baby, you believe that you are all powerful, because to a baby, it appears that they are all powerful, right? And infantile omnipotence is what's called primary narcissism, right? And as you go through life, you develop what's called ego development, where you get a realistic sense of how powerful you are, right? And that ego development is a difficult process, right? That, a baby, thinks they're all powerful, but they get to be a certain age, and they realize they are not powerful, and their parents or their siblings or other people in the world overpower them, and that's a rude awakening. And often it can lead to, the opposite extreme, where, the child grows up thinking it has no power. And a lot of people go through life, they had a stage of infantile omnipotence, and then as they got to be 2 or 3, their parent overpowered them very, 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 very much. And then they became very much disempowered, and they thought they had no power. And then as they grow up, as they become a teen, as they become an adult, they realize, oh, I do have power, right? And that ego development is the process through which a human being comes to understand how much power they actually have, and operates through life understanding their power. And I believe that our organization, CPI, one of the great things about us is that we have gone through a stage of ego development, right? Where we have been gradually, our whole organization is constantly saying, how can we intervene? What can we do? And how can we exercise our power? And that we have a realistic sense of what resources are available, a realistic sense of what people and members we have. And throughout our entire history as a group, we've been ego developing. Our organizational ego development has been our ability to say, look, the USA is threatening a war against Iran. How can we intervene? There's an election going on where one candidate is claiming to be anti-war and the other candidate is promising to continue the wars. How can we intervene? And we're constantly engaging in how can we be aware of our size, be aware of our abilities, and take action, right? That's called ego development. And that is something you will not see in other organizations, right? Other organizations are not doing that. They are not testing their power. They're not testing their strength. They have a routine that they engage in. We'll get to that in a minute. But basically, the innovationist method, what our organization is constantly doing is we're saying, how can we intervene and advance the struggle against imperialism with the resources we have or can acquire? What can be done? That's what we're doing, right? And our organization, every time, every day practically, we go back to the drawing board and say, look, there's a situation happening. How can we intervene with the resources that we have or can acquire? What can be done? How can we advance the struggle against imperialism? That is what we've constantly been doing. And because of our ability to do that, right, we have accomplished a lot. And I'm going to go over with, 3 examples of times that we really intervened. All right. One example, February 19th, 2023. There was a big anti-war rally in Washington, D.C. called Rage Against the War Machine. And to be an official sponsor of the rally, all you had to do was give them $1,000. Well, based on membership dues and the amount of money we had in our bank account, we did it. So we sent them $1,000 and they put our logo on the event and we were official sponsors of the event, totally within our power. And then we thought, wouldn't it be great if one of our members, perhaps our president at the time, or perhaps myself as the ideological leader, could speak to the rally? So we met with the organizer of the rally, Nick Brana, and we said we would like to speak at the rally. And he basically said, because of drama, because there was a huge amount of egos, right? Because of certain, influencers and other people, it just didn't look like we were going to speak. So what do we do? What did we do? Well, we thought about it, right? We thought about it. And we thought, well, maybe we can donate more money to speak. And so we approached them and said, well, look, what if we gave you another $1,000? Would you then let us go on the stage? And they said, no, it's not how it works. It's not pay to play. We said, okay, we can't do that. But then we realized that Scott Ritter, who is a great anti-imperialist, he was forced off the stage. He was not allowed to speak. It was an absolute injustice because of some of the persecution he's been subjected to and the way he was framed up and charged on some bogus nonsense, because of his criminal, record that is a completely illegitimate criminal record. They wouldn't let Scott Ritter speak. And we realized, well, we're friends. We're friends with Scott Ritter, right? And they have blocked him from speaking, but we have money in our bank account. And so I went to Washington, D.C., and I walked the streets of Washington, D.C., until I found a hotel that had a conference room very close to where the rally ended at the White House. And just 2 blocks from the White House, there was a really nice hotel. And we found this hotel, and I went into the hotel, and I said, can I rent your conference room on the day, February 19th of the rally? And they said, you sure can. And I said, and can we, prepare a food buffet? To serve food to all the people that went to the rally that'll probably be hungry. And they said, you sure can. That'll be this small fee. And it wasn't that much money. And I checked and how much money we had in the CPI bank accounts. We had quite a bit of money. And I checked, and we contacted Scott Ritter and we said, hey, Scott, you've been unable to speak at the rally on February 19th. And, unfortunately, due to some drama, we're unable to speak at the rally. But, we really would like to give you a platform. So, Scott, we're going to have a reception for Scott Ritter. And we rented the room, we rented the stage materials, and this is what happened. Great. But the reason that the Center for Political Innovation exists is to put on events like this, to give a platform to ideas we don't widely hear in the United States, to educate people about anti-imperialism and socialism. And that is why it is really an honor tonight to bring forward our guest of honor, a real hero, someone who deserves to be heard from the heavens. Everyone should hear what this man has to say. Scott Ritter is here. Scott Ritter is here. We are proud that Scott Ritter is here. This is a hero. This is a hero right here. We love you, Scott. We love you. Go ahead and give us some words. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. To be honest, I thought I was just coming here to a reception to say hi to people, and speaking is, hopefully it's a bonus.
Yeah. Now, that was we intervened. We had the money, we had the resources. We were unable to get on the stage, so we had our own reception, and we had a beautiful reception for Scott Ritter. It was a great activity, and I think Briggy joined CPI because she went to that reception. She met us there, and there were just so many great developments that happened as a result of that, right? That was a great thing that we were able to do, right? Another intervention that we did, right, was there was an election in America, and it was clear that that Trump was the candidate who was giving voice to the aspirations of the people that were at odds with imperialism, right? The imperialist system, was leading towards more war. The imperialist system was leading toward more censorship. The imperialist system was leading towards more impoverishment of the population. And as much as Donald Trump, he said a lot of things that we didn't agree with, he was running on a platform of, I will end the wars, I will protect your freedom of speech, and I will make the economy stronger. And people that were mad at the establishment were rallying around Donald Trump. Now, we disagreed with a lot of what Donald Trump said, but we said, we would like to intervene, and that Trump has said he wants to end the wars. And during his first term in office, he became the first American president ever to visit North Korea. So seeing that there was an upsurge in the country of people that wanted to end the wars and were rallying around Trump to do so, people that were opposed to the American establishment, and seeing that this could be a moment for us to advance the struggle against imperialism, what did we do? Well, we launched our Peace MAGA campaign. And we started out at Trump Tower. We went to the New York Public Library, and we went to Madison Square Garden with a big banner that said only peace can. So we're here on 34th Street, and the crowds have lined up. China make America to bring on and started the process of peace on the Korean Peninsula. And we want to see peace not just with North Korea, but with Russia, with China, with many countries around the world. It is outrageous that billions of dollars is being spent on prolonging the war in Ukraine when our people can't get relief in North Carolina. People are left behind in Georgia and North Carolina. They can't get the relief they need. This is outrageous. Our government is more concerned with waging wars around the world than for caring for our own people. That we need a president who will put America first, a president who will bring peace around the world. Only peace can make America great. How sick I am of sanctions. Only peace can make America great. With Putin, I can't.
The military and media really.
Yeah, it was a great day. And so we showed up and we set up our big banner out in front of Madison Square Garden. And 20,000 people attended that rally. At least half of them saw our banner. We were quoted in and highlighted in New Yorker magazine because of our banner. We were also featured in USA Today. I didn't even know about it at the time, but I finally found that we actually, our photo of our banner was in USA Today. We intervened and we were able to push a message of peace with North Korea and ending the wars within the Trump campaign. It was a very, very effective thing to do, right? And that was an intervention. Another thing that happened, right, is there's been an upsurge of protests in America against what Israel's doing. Ever since October 7th, a lot of people have been in the streets protesting it. Well, the people running those protests are generally not friendly to us. And even though we agree with their message, for the most part, they frame it in a way that's very hostile and unfriendly to the American people. However, their message should be, why don't we have jobs and schools for Americans, not weapons for this other country, Israel? Why don't we focus on America first and building up America's economy rather than sending guns and tanks and weapons to this foreign government called Israel? That should have been their message. Instead, their message was, we hate America, and America's an evil, racist country, and fuck you. You're just as bad as Israel. America is just like Israel, and we hate both America and Israel. Screw you. Well, you can see why that didn't go over, right? If, most Americans weren't going to buy that message. But there was an upsurge of people that were just morally opposed to the intervention and to the activities of Israel and to the USA supporting them. And unfortunately, the misleaders of the Answer Coalition and the Party for Socialism and Liberation and Jewish Voices for Peace and some other groups, they were misleading those protests to make them ineffective. But what group was doing a lot to support the Palestinians more than anybody? The Houthis, right? The Ansar Allah, the Yemeni Shia Muslims of Yemen, they were supporting the Houthis of Yemen. So what did we do? We realized that anyone who claims they support the Palestinians is going to have to admire on some level the Houthis. So we published, and because I risked my life trying to go to Yemen with medical aid, and because I know people that are Shia Muslims, we put together a booklet about the history of the Houthi movement, explaining who the Houthis are, using the Houthi movement in Yemen to explain what imperialism is, to explain about anti-imperialist movements and the struggle against austerity, and even talk about American history. And we published this beautiful book, if I dare say so myself, and we distributed this book in bulk. And all across the country at Palestine rallies, thousands of people have received a copy of this book. And how can they oppose it? All right, it's about the Houthis. And that was a way we could intervene, right? These are 3 examples of how we intervened, right? We maneuvered in order to have an impact. And even though we're a small organization, we've been able to have an impact by intervening, right? And there are certain themes that are consistent in CPI interventions. One is that when there's an upsurge that's going on, a general upsurge, we find a way into the upsurge due to a secondary contradiction. So, for example, the upsurge to support Trump. The establishment of the America didn't want Trump, right? Now, Trump, I mean, he hasn't been a great president in his second term, wasn't too great in his first term, but it was clear that he was running against the American establishment. Mainstream media didn't want him to win. He was talking against the establishment and their wars and their censorship. So there was an upsurge of people that were opposing the system and rallying around Trump. So there was an upsurge, but within that upsurge, there was a secondary contradiction, which was that Trump, he had people like Rudy Giuliani were campaigning for him about he's on the side of Israel, but there were people like Tulsi Gabbard. There were people like RFK that were emphasizing, Tucker Carlson, were using the campaign to push an anti-war message. So we intervened. We boosted the anti-war section of the Trump campaign. There was a secondary contradiction within the upsurge, right? And that tactic of you see an upsurge and you then boost a secondary contradiction within the upsurge, that is a very effective way of intervening. And we did the same thing with the Houthi movement, right? With the Palestinians, right? There was an upsurge of Americans supporting the Palestinians, but within that upsurge, there was a secondary contradiction, which is that, Jewish Voices for Peace and those kind of groups, they didn't really support, they especially didn't support Iran. They really didn't support the Houthis, but it was hard not to support the Houthis because of what the Houthis were doing. So we went to their activity. We went into the upsurge, highlighting a message of who the Houthis are and what the Houthis stand for as a way to address a secondary contradiction. And that this gets back to the Communist Manifesto, right? The Communist Manifesto ends with, in short, the communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement against the existing and social and political order of things. But in all these movements, they bring to the front as the leading question, the property question, no matter what its degree of development at the time. So whenever there's a movement against the existing order of things, you support it, but you then intervene, right, by bringing to the front the property question, bringing forward your own politics. So what you do is there's an upsurge going on, right? And that upsurge is happening. And then you join the upsurge, but then you boost your own politics and your own message. And there's a secondary contradiction. There's a disagreement within that movement. And you can become the voice of one side of that contradiction, right? And you can raise the economic question and you can put forward your own programs. There was an upsurge, a revolutionary movement of people that were rallying around Trump because they were against the system. And we went into it and re-raised anti-imperialism and peace with North Korea and the new economy. There was an upsurge of people, a revolutionary movement against the existing order of things for Palestine. And we intervened in it. And we raised the property question by publishing a pamphlet teaching people about the Houthis and teaching people about imperialism. And that's the method, right? Is that you intervene. But in addition to that, we maneuvered around gatekeepers, right? If there was gatekeepers, right, at the Rage Against the War Machine rally, as much as I think the organizers of that rally did an excellent job, and, Angela McCurdle is a friend. I haven't heard from Nick in a while, but I consider him to be a friend. I think they did a great job. But unfortunately, due to, drama in politics, we weren't able to get on that stage. So what did we do? Did we just throw a fit and demand to be on the stage? No, that would have just hurt us. That wouldn't have helped us. No, we maneuvered around them. We got our own hotel. We found a way to give Scott Ritter a platform. That's what we did, right? And, the Trump campaign, we're not going to campaign for Trump. There's things, we can't intervene in American politics anyway. But even if we had, do you think they were going to let us? No. But we found a way to do outreach at the Trump campaign, right? The Palestine movement. The Palestine movement is run by awful gatekeepers who hate America and don't really want to stop the war in Gaza, or just protest hustlers, right? But we intervened, right? And we got a message out that the bulk of the people involved in the Palestine protests were very receptive to. Maneuvering around gatekeepers. Number 3, offering something unique. If we had just sounded like everybody else, no one would have listened to us, right? We had our own reception after the Rage Against the War Machine, where we offered Scott Ritter. He wasn't available at the rally, but we were able to offer Scott Ritter and offer our message, right? The Peace MAGA banner. Nobody else was out there with Trump and Kim Jong-un shaking hands, but we were, right? We offered something unique. We stood out, right? We offered something unique with our Only Peace Can Make America Great Again banner. And our book on the Houthis. Again, who else is handing this out? This is not something that anyone else can find, right? We offered a unique message, a unique book, right? These are ways that we can intervene. There's an upsurge, and you see a secondary contradiction. You maneuver around gatekeepers, and you offer something unique, right? And that, that's the quote from the Communist Manifesto. And that there's some historical precedent for some of this. And I'm going to talk first about Lenin and the struggle against revisionism. But then next, I'm going to talk about the Bible, actually. But first, we'll talk about Lenin and the struggle against revisionism. There's a very important book that Lenin wrote, and it's called What Is to Be Done, right? And it was published in 1903. It's considered the founding document of the Bolshevik movement. And I would like to tell you to read it, but if I did, I'm not sure that would be the best advice. It's very, 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 very difficult to read, right? Because it is full of obscure names and obscure references and all of that. It's called What Is to Be Done. And it's Lenin pitching the idea of forming a new party, a party of new type, the Bolshevik Party, right? It's right up there on my shelf. What is to be done, right? It's right up there. And in it, he critiques what he calls bowing to spontaneity and tailism, right? And he said that what was going on in Russia at the time is there were strikes and protests that would happen. The workers would go on strike. And what the communists in Russia did at the time is the strike would happen and they would run to it and shout, "We support you and we're communists." Well, what good did that do? Right? The strike already happened. It would have happened with or without you. And so something spontaneous happened and they bowed to it. They just ran after it. And he called that tailism. They weren't changing the world. They were simply tailing after and chasing things that were already happening. They were bowing to spontaneity or engaging in tailism. Whereas he was saying that what they should do is present a line of march and that they should become tribunes of the people. And that the argument that the communists used is they said, well, we're a political party and these workers are going on strike. And so by being a political party that supports a strike, we are lending the economic struggle a political character. And, Lenin just makes fun of this. He says, this is ridiculous. Like, that's your contribution, right? So there's this, you should be teaching. He said, without revolutionary theory, there is not a revolutionary movement. And that instead of striving to be trade union secretaries, we should be tribunes of the people. Right? That was the Leninist approach, and that kind of defined Bolshevism. And in his pamphlet, What Is to Be Done, he laid out the vision for a party of new type, agitation, propaganda, etc. And he was actually, in that pamphlet, he was arguing about revolutionary tactics. He was actually addressing a bigger question that he may not have even realized he was addressing. And this is when I read Lyndon LaRouche and Lynn Marcus. Lynn Marcus talks about, how he was addressing a bigger question, which is the question of historical inevitability versus the ability of human beings to intervene. Marxism has a big flaw ideologically, right? And Marx himself kind of acknowledges this. And there's places where Engels acknowledged this. And it's true. Marxism when I talk about living biologically, Marxism very much does believe that history is inevitable. People just act according to their economic interests, right? And that is a big part of the Marxist belief system. According to the Marxist belief system, there's no room for willpower. People will just do what is in their economic interest. The proletariat will just naturally one day say, you know what? It's in my economic interest to fight my employer. It's in my economic interest to overthrow the capitalist. There's no room for willpower. And this is a critique of Marxism that has been widely made. George Sorel made this critique of the spiritual weakness of it. There's many people that have pointed, the Catholic Church, their critique of Marxism. They said, Marxism says people's behavior is simply a result of economic conditions. However, the Catholic Church said people can do the right thing, even if it's against their own economic interest. And that there's even an essay, The Role of the Individual in History by Plekhanov, that addresses this question. And this is really one of the weaknesses of Karl Marx's teaching. Historical materialism doesn't really have room for willpower. And Lenin, in his pamphlet, What Is to Be Done, he was just talking about tactics, but he was really saying that it's going to require willpower. He was actually repudiating an aspect of classical Marxist teaching. He was saying we're going to have to get together and form our party of new type. We're going to have to get together and plan agitating and propagating. It's not just going to happen. And that the Marxists he was critiquing, who were engaging in tailism and bowing to spontaneity, they were actually closer to what Karl Marx actually said, which is it'll just happen. And eventually these workers, they're going to go on strike. And because they're on strike, they're eventually going to realize that we need a political party to support the strike. And so we're lending the political character, and it's just going to naturally. And Lenin is saying, no, it requires our willpower. Well, that's not Marxism. That's not historical materialism. That is idealism, the power of intent, the power of action, the willpower, right? There's not room in the classical materialist ideology for willpower, but there is room for it, right? In what Lenin was doing. And in fact, his whole pamphlet, What Is to Be Done? What's the name of it? What is to be done, right? And that was the name of a popular novel, a science fiction novel in Russia at the time. He took the name as a spoof, but he was arguing against historical inevitability and economic determinism. And he was saying we must choose, and we must not live biologically. We must make a decision and intervene in history. That's really, really powerful. But it gets even further, because as Lenin develops, the Bolsheviks, they form their own party. 1912, the Bolsheviks expel the Mensheviks, and you have, the Bolsheviks emerging. Then World War I breaks out. And when you read Lenin's writing on World War I, right, imperialism and the split in socialism, imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, he calls out the Social Democratic Party of Germany, the British Labour Party. He calls the Second International stinking corpses. And he basically points out that the bourgeois Labour Party, right, the reformists, the fake socialists, the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders, right, the Labour Party in Britain, the German Social Democrats, Karl Kautsky and Schneiderman and Ebhardt, that's part of the system. Right? They're not, he's pointing out that capitalism had developed into this stage of imperialism. Part of imperialism is that workers in the homeland, some of them get privileges and become, the aristocracy of labor. And he says that basically part of the system, part of the window dressing, the natural window dressing of imperialism is socialism. That Western imperialist countries have to have socialists. Right. And those socialists create kindergartens. So all the kids in Germany learn how to march in line. And those socialists create a national health care service so that, the workers are physically fit and ready to go out and fight. And those socialists, they create, a 12-hour workday. And that basically they enact reforms that make imperialism work better. And that modern imperialism has to have a bourgeois labor party. And that what he's pointing out is it's kind of like what he's arguing and What Is to Be Done, in that the bourgeois labor party or social democracy is not exercising agency. It's not an independent force saying we believe in this and we're going to assert our agenda. It is rather a part of the system. It's part of the scenery. It's part of how the system is set up. It's not an independent force opposing the system. It's just part of it. And that's what he's arguing. So in his argument with and the struggle against revisionism, Lenin is actually getting at what this whole presentation is about, the innovationist method, right? He's saying we have to exercise our own willpower. We have to intervene. We have to form our own party of new type. We have to agitate and propagate and practice democratic centralism. He's saying we have to intervene in history. And that was not what the prevailing Marxist movement did, to the point that they marched workers off to their death in World War I. Now, you can go back 2,000 years before that to Jesus Christ and the Pharisees, right? And, Jesus Christ is someone I greatly admire. And there's a reason that for 2,000 years, it's the largest religion in the world, follows Jesus Christ. If you look at the arguments that Jesus Christ had with the Pharisees, they're very similar to this argument that Lenin was having with the Social Democrats. And it's really related to everything that we're talking about here tonight. What was the primary disagreement that Jesus had with the Jewish leaders of his time, with the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin? What was his disagreement with them? His disagreement was the question of legalism. Legalism, which is that the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, they followed the letter of the law, right? You have Leviticus, the book of Leviticus, you have the Torah, right? There are very, very specific laws that the Jewish people were given by God and they were expected to follow. And Jesus comes along and he says, you are following the law and not God. And I think he says the letter killeth at one point. And he says, you're following the letter, you're not following God. You're making an idol out of the law. For example, at one point, these Pharisees confront him and they say to him, which of the 10 commandments is the most important? And they're trying to get him in trouble because at the time it was a sin to say that one of the commandments was higher than the other. And Jesus replies and he says, the greatest of all commandments is to love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And all the other commandments, all the law flows from that. And he's saying it's not a matter of following the 10 commandments to the letter. It's a matter of loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself. And that if you love your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to steal, you're not going to murder, you're not going to commit adultery, you're not going to be jealous and envious and covet. And that the 10 commandments flow from an attitude. And he's saying we need to follow the attitude of loving God and loving our neighbor as ourselves and not focus on the letter, right? And that's what he's getting at. And the Sabbath, right? He's healing people on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees confront him and say, how can you heal people on the Sabbath? You're not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath. That's a big sin. And what does he say? He says the Sabbath was made for man. Man was not made for the Sabbath. So right there, Jesus is saying that we human beings, it is about our intention. It is not a matter of following the law or the letter. It is about our intentions. We have to get our intentions in line with God. We have to do what is right. What is right. We have to love our neighbor as ourselves. We have to love God. And if we can get our intentions right, if we can exercise the proper willpower, that's what matters, not following the letter, right? Whereas the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, they were following the letter of the law. And then Jesus also says, my kingdom is not of this world. Now, what does that mean? He's saying, look, this world is run by evil forces. This world is run by Satan. At the time, it was run by the Roman Empire, nasty bunch of people, and he's saying, I am not going to conform my message to be in line with this evil world. My kingdom is not of this world. I live according to my own principles, not the principles of this world, right? And that he tells his followers, build up your treasures in heaven, not on earth. He's constantly saying, follow what is right, connect with God, connect with the higher power, don't conform to this world, right? That is a common message he's getting at, right? That you connect to the higher forces, connect to what is right, connect to God, connect, and don't conform to this world around you. My kingdom is not of this world. And then ultimately, there are two passages in the Bible, one from the Old Testament and one from the New Testament, that really make this point abundantly clear. And I guess the first one is from the book of Exodus, right? And it's Moses, right? Moses is given the commandment, the burning bush. The voice of God is speaking to him in the burning bush. And in the book of Exodus 3, right, Moses' people are enslaved in Egypt. They are slaves in Egypt. And Moses, suddenly there's a bush that's on fire and it starts speaking to him, the burning bush. And this burning bush tells him that he's got to go free his people. He's got to go exercise agency. His people are enslaved. He's got to go rescue them. And he's just blown away because this bush is talking to him and telling him that it is his job to go free his people. And it gives him this mission. And God, speaking through the burning bush, says he's got to go do this. So Moses says, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I tell them? And God says to Moses, I am who I am. That is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. The name of God is I am. God is agency. God is individual willpower. That is the essence. God is the ultimate force in the universe, and genius is the unity of God and man in acts of the Spirit, as Wallace Wattles said, that when you are not conforming to this world, when you are not living biologically, and when you are exercising your willpower to serve a higher purpose, you are connecting to God, right? And then later, thousands of years later, Jesus is preaching in the temple, right? And he's confronted by the Pharisees who don't like what he's preaching, and they confront him, right? And I will pull that one up, right? John 8:58, right? They confront him and they're really angry. And it's a long, long argument he has with the Pharisees that goes back and forth, which is really, I would really recommend reading it, right? But he's going back and forth with the Pharisees, and they're furious with all the things he's saying. And then he says to them, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day. He saw it and was glad. And then the Jews said unto him, thou art not yet 50 years old, and thou hast seen Abraham? And Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. And it says, they then took up stones to cast at him. But Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and passed by. He said, I am. Right? Before Abraham was, I am. So the very essence of God is our ability to transcend this world, to not conform to this world, to not, my kingdom is not of this world. It is our ability to not engage in legalism, but to love our God with all our heart and mind, our ability to love our neighbor as ourselves, our ability to connect to a higher power. That is the essence of God. Right? I mean, this is profound stuff, right? Right? As I said, genius is the union of man and God in acts of the Spirit, right? And as an organization, we are engaging in genius. We are engaging in the union of man and God in the acts of the Spirit, and we are learning our own strength, and we are learning to innovate. How can we take the world around us and struggle to make it better? And I guess I'll just tell a story. And this is a story. I'll flashback. This is a long time ago. This is in 2012. 2012, they released a movie called Red Dawn. It was a remake of a 1980s movie with Patrick Swayze. They remade it. Red Dawn was this movie from the 1980s about the Soviet Union, the communists invading America. They remade it in 2012 to be about North Korea invading America. And I had this idea. Why don't we go protest against the movie Red Dawn? And this is what happened.
This film, Red Dawn, is lying war propaganda. The Korean people have been under siege for the last 50 years trying to unite their country. Kim Il-sung liberated Korea from the Japanese invaders, and they've been trying to reunite their country. This lying Hollywood film has North Korea invading the United States. That's outrageous. Right now,
against communism, and it continues to this day. But I don't think it's about the communist scare. In 18
you would culture. This movie is crap, just like the first Red Dawn, that Americans would even have to fantasize that this country is coming to invade them when they kill 3 million people there is nonsense. It's complete nonsense. We have to side with the Korean people, both in the north and the south, who are resisting our government, and we have to do that by doing everything we can to put a thorn in our government's side. That's why I support Occupy Wall Street, and that's why I support anti-imperialist forces in the United States, no matter what side of any issue else they're on.
We need is jobs, millions of jobs, tens of millions of jobs, not a hate movie. We need jobs, not hate. In the first Nuremberg trial of Nazi war criminals, Julius Streicher was one of those that was sentenced to be executed. He didn't pull any gold teeth, he didn't run any gas chambers, but he made it all possible by spreading hate through the Third Reich. This is a hate movie against the Korean people who have suffered so much. 1/4, at least 1/4 of those incinerated in Hiroshima and Nagasaki were Korean slave laborers. The same U.S. Air Force that refused to drop any bombs on the railroad lines leading to Auschwitz, bombed those Korean slave laborers, burned them alive, and later they killed at least 3 million Korean people during the Korean War. To this day, the center of Seoul, a square mile, there's a square mile military base in the middle of Seoul, occupied by the U.S. Army. It's as if a foreign army occupied Central Park. That shows you what a colony South Korea is. We need jobs, not hate. Don't go to this hate movie. It's racist, vile propaganda against the Korean people. Don't go to this movie. It's war propaganda.
It's not the Korean people.
Right
in South Korea.
Yeah. So what we did, we got North Korean flags and we protested out in front of the movie theater. We had 12 people there. Tiny little protest. We didn't even take up the sidewalk. We had a stool, a wooden stool. We stood on it. We had 2 North Korean flags that we ordered from Amazon.com. All right. And that protest, right? You would think that, okay, so what, right? It's New York City. It's Times Square. There's a bunch of crazy people yelling in Times Square. The end is near and, and whatever. No, actually, that protest caused a huge stir, Why did it cause a huge stir? It caused a huge stir because I guess it just caught people's attention. Wow, there's people supporting North Korea. National Review magazine ran an article about it. Occupy Wall Street supports North Korea. The video of it circulated across the internet. There were articles about it in Korean newspapers in both North and South Korea. North Korean state television showed that video, of the rally. And it created a huge splash, right? It was just a really big deal. And why was it a big deal? Well, because we'd carried the North Korean flag, because we had gone into the movie theater very theatrically. It created a huge splash. I had never done a protest that had created that much attention. And it's very interesting because for a tiny protest of 12 people against a Hollywood movie, it got so much attention, but it got immediate condemnation. I was told by so many older communists, why would you bring the North Korean flag to that protest? Why would you? And why would you have it be a rally to support North Korea? It should have been a rally for peace on the Korean Peninsula. It should have just been a rally for peace on the Korean Peninsula. You never should have mentioned North Korea, right? And the Party for Socialism and Liberation had an event where they showed the videos, and they said we would never organize a protest like this. Never, never, never. And the Communist Party of the United States, they also were furious about it. And I heard later from people who left, oh yeah, they were so angry about it. How dare he? And they were all saying you shouldn't have waved North Korean flags. You shouldn't have talked about Kim Il-sung. You should have just called a rally for peace on the Korean Peninsula. All these things we should have done. But if we had done those things, no one would have noticed. No one would have noticed, right? It was the performance aspect of it, the performance art of it that made that rally catch people's attention. Look, there they are with North Korean flags. There they are in Times Square screaming about a movie, and they're supporting the bad guys in the movie. Like, if we had done that rally in a tame, calm way, nobody would have noticed. But even though we did a tiny, tiny rally, we did it in a way that jerked people awake. Oh my God, there's people supporting North Korea, and they've got the North Korean flag. And later, we did another rally when the movie Olympus Has Fallen came out. We brought big pictures of Kim Il-sung's face. And again, we got widely condemned. All the communists couldn't stand. How dare they do this? Well, we did it because it got people's attention. It's theatrical. It's performative, right? And it awakened people from their slumber, right? And it was a way to get the message across. When I met with the North Koreans in Quito, Ecuador, the following year, I went to Quito, Ecuador for the World Youth Festival. I think I have an image of that. We met with the North Koreans, right? Let me see if I got the picture of me meeting with the North Koreans, right? Yeah, we met with the North Koreans. They had heard about the rally, and they immediately knew us as the people who had organized this rally. This rally was heard all around the world, right? All around the world. And if we had just followed the rules, if we had made it a boring rally for peace on the Korean Peninsula, if we'd made it no one would have noticed. But because we did it theatrically with Korean flags and big pictures of Kim Il-sung, it got people's attention, right? We intervened, right? And that was a brilliant thing that we did. And I look at that and I think about what we've done since then, with the Kamala Harris book and the Peace MAGA campaign and with Scott Ritter. And it's a matter of like, what can you do? How can you change the conversation? How can you awaken people with what you've got? And you can't do it by following the rules, and you can't do it by being part of the window dressing. And, why did we make such a splash? People have joined CPI because of this book, right? I had somebody call me on the phone about a month ago, an older man who had been handed this book at a protest in Chicago. He had taken it home and he'd put it on his shelf. And he had just been at home in the wintertime and he read it and he was so blown away by this book, he joined our organization, right? We distributed this book in bulk all across the country. Why did this make a difference? Because we're not doing it the old way. We're challenging people that PSL and the groups that are running the Palestine protests, they are the bourgeois labor parties. They're what Lenin was talking about. They are bowing to spontaneity. Whenever there's some kind of liberal cause, they go chasing after it. They go chasing after the liberal cause wherever it exists. And they're not independent actors, right? They are living biologically. They're just like a mouse in a cage. And, they seek pain. They avoid, they seek pleasure. They avoid pain. Right. The ruling class attacks Palestine. Right. Israel attacks Palestine, and they, like clockwork, without even thinking about it, on autopilot, they protest against it. And whoop-de-doo. Right. And they're living biologically. Right. They're part of the functions of this system. Just like this system needs to bomb and destroy Gaza, this system also needs to show that there's room for dissent. And so the protest cage, the People's Forum, and all of that are set up to facilitate, to be part of imperialism, to say, look, you can be a Muslim and be an American. Sure, we are supporting Israel and America, but look, we got Brian Becker. There's PSL. You can be part of PSL and be a good American while you go to grad school. You know, it's part of the system. Whereas we are exercising agency. We're saying, no, we are going to intervene in history, right? We are exercising agency, right? And we are exercising our willpower, and we are intervening. We have a method of how we work, right? And that method involves, upsurges and secondary contradictions. It involves maneuvering around gatekeepers. It involves offering something unique, but it really just gets down to our willpower, right? It is that genius is the union of man and God in the acts of the Spirit. We're being human and mastering our environment, looking at the world around us and saying, how can we intervene and make it better? We are saying, God, grant me the serenity to accept that things that I cannot change, but the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? We are exercising our human existence, right? We are engaging in ego development, right? And learning our own strength and learning our own abilities. And as we do that, we are achieving more victories, right? And we are exercising, we are connecting to higher forces and doing what needs to be done. There's a method to what we're doing. And that just gets me back to the reason that I wear this ring, right? This is an Islamic Akek ring. And the reason that I wear this ring, as I've said before, is I learned that, when I was in Iran, all the adult men were wearing this ring. And I learned that the reason they wear it is because the temple at Mecca was originally a pagan temple full of idols. And the Prophet Muhammad, his followers, his movement, they took the temple at Mecca and they smashed all the idols. They destroyed all the idols. And so they carried, the Prophet Muhammad wore on his finger a piece of one of the idols to celebrate the victory of the one true God and truth over idolatry, right? And that was, but I learned that story, but the story hit home with me. It really spoke to me because I had read a book called Heroes, Hero Worship, and the Heroic in History by Thomas Carlyle. And in that book, Thomas Carlyle asked the question, why is it that so many of the great prophets of history, Muhammad, Jeremiah, Jesus, Abraham, why is it that prophets are always going around smashing idols? Why? What's going on there? And he says, do we really think that ancient human beings were stupid? That they really believed that, they could carve a piece of wood in their backyard and that would be God? They could carve a piece of stone and put some eyes on it or put a face on it and that would be God? No. When idols were erected, they were not the deities themselves. They were symbols. They were representations of higher truth. But over time, the higher truth that the idols stood for became forgotten. And the people got into a dull routine of bowing before the idols, sacrificing to the idols, reciting incantations and mantras that they didn't understand. And the higher principle and truth that the idols stood for was lost. So the prophet, Jeremiah, Abraham, Jesus, Muhammad, the prophet is sent to the earth to smash the idol. Not simply as an act of destruction, but because the idol has become an impediment to the truth that the idol once stood for. The prophet is reconnecting mankind with the truth that the idol once stood for, with the higher truth and with the higher principle upon which the idol was founded. It is necessary to smash and destroy the idol so that the truth that the idol once stood for can be reasserted. That is brilliant. And when I read that in Thomas Carlyle's very, very important book, it really spoke to me because that is the problem, right? That all of these movements, Christianity, communism, fascism, any movement, any religion, all of that, they all stood for something. But after a time, they become absorbed. They become lukewarm. They become devoid of the principle and the meaning from which they once stood. They become routine. They become part of the window dressing. They become idols. They become something that people are just going through the motions and living biologically, just like that rat in the maze, just like the weed in your garden. They stood for man and God connecting and asserting their will to change the world, but they gradually faded into being part of this world. And that is why the idol must be destroyed. And that is why we must connect to higher truth wherever we can find it. And that's what we're doing with the Center for Political Innovation. And that's why we are innovationists. And this presentation tonight, it was called Think Like a Revolutionary and Change the World. And that is what we are doing, right? And I began by saying genius is the union of man and God in the acts of the Spirit. And this is the method that we have applied, and it is a genius method. And if you look, again, I urged you at the beginning of the slideshow, go to our website, go to cpiusa.org, go to the About page, and look at all that we have done, all the elections that we have observed, all the demonstrations we've organized, all the presidents that we've interacted with, you look at our success is based on the fact that we have a brilliant method. The innovationist method is a method that no one else understands. Right? No one else is going to get on here and talk about both Vladimir Lenin and Jesus. No one else is going to get on here and talk about ego development and primitive infantile omnipotence. We have an understanding that no one else has, right? Innovationism is a breakthrough, a method of understanding the world, learning while leading and leading while learning. We have something very, very special. Innovationism is a new stage. And if you think you're going to find the answer in plain old-fashioned communism, you won't. And if you think you're going to find the answer by, following the Republicans or following the Democrats or following conservative podcasts or following woke podcasts, you won't. If you want to change the world, you need to learn and get involved in the struggle. You can only learn by engaging in change, and you can only change the world by learning about it. And we have a unique method and understanding called innovationism. And I would encourage you to join the Center for Political Innovation. You're going to see our method in the streets tomorrow. We're going to be in the streets in New York City. We're going to be in the streets in Chicago. We're going to be in the streets in Minneapolis. We're going to be saying no war against Iran. And we're going to intervene with our limited resources, our small membership, our small budget. We are going to intervene and try to raise the message of opposing war with Iran. And I'm really excited. I am so excited. I'm going to be seeing members every time I'm around CPI people. It just gives me a glowing, happy feeling. And I am looking forward to seeing my buddy Noah, and I'm looking forward to seeing, our members, new members from New Jersey, and I'm looking forward to seeing Briggy. And I'm just really excited. And I can't wait to see what Dan does out in LA. And I can't wait to see what the Chicago members, Gabby and others, are able to do. And I can't wait to see what Penny does in Minneapolis. And I know people are doing stuff in Colorado and South Carolina, and people are doing stuff in Portland, Oregon. I mean, I am just excited to see how we will take this awful situation of Trump threatening war with Iran, and we will intervene to the best of our ability to get an anti-war message out there. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited, and I'm really proud that we have an organization that is capable of engaging in this kind of intervention. And that's what is special about CPI. And again, no other organization is offering you this. There's a lot of window dressing. There's a lot of people going through the motions. We are innovationists. So there's a couple other things I wanted to comment on before we start answering questions. I do want to remind you that if you'd like to ask a question in the second half of the show, the best way to send it is to go to buymeacoffee.com /Caleb Maupin. That's the best way to send your questions, right? Buymeacoffee.com /Caleb Maupin. Send your questions. You can also send me Rumble rants. Let's see if anyone's done a Rumble rant yet. No Rumble rants as of yet, but you can do Rumble rants. You can also Cash App me at Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App. But the best way the absolute best way to send me your question for me to answer in the second half of the show is to buy me a coffee. So go to calebmaupin.com so go to buymeacoffee.com/calebmaupin, send your question. Somebody already did, and I appreciate it. And I hope that there are many more behind that. But I just wanted to comment on a couple other things. One thing I did want to comment on is that, so there's this candidate in Chicago, and I don't even know how to pronounce her last name. She goes by Kat, or is it Kat Asbega, or what is it, Kat? What's her name? Kat Abugzela, right? And I knew this woman was completely manufactured from the moment she launched her campaign. And you can ask the Chicago CPI members. I sent it to them. I said, take a look at this, right? And she's trying to look like some kind of manufactured campaign from below. And she is talking about Palestine, but she's a neocon. And she's demonizing Russia, and hating Russia was a big part of her campaign from the beginning. And so now video has surfaced. She's a neocon. She's a war hawk. She's presenting herself as this revolutionary, woke young person, and she's not. And a lot of people are just really disappointed with her pro-interventionist, pro-war foreign policy, and clips are surfacing and stuff. And I mean, it's one of those situations where I hate to say I told you so, but so I'm going to put on this clip that's floating around. But you remember, Gabby, I told you about this woman and how she was fake, and how I was hoping we could go to her rallies and, do some Jose Vega type stuff. You know what I mean? She's totally an AOC type. But anyway, this is some of what surfaced.
To see full restoration of Ukraine's land. Like, this war is a travesty. Russia initiated a war of aggression, which is an international crime.
Bullshit. The USA overthrew the Ukrainian government in 2014. Installed a fanatically anti-Russian government,
crime as decided by the United States and Russia after World War II. This is very similar to what we see when Hitler tried to seize Sudetenland.
Oh my God. Give me a break, right? This is the only reason Russia has had to send its forces into Ukraine, is because Ukraine was killing the Russian-speaking people who declared independence since 2014. But
even with capitulation, it didn't stop him. So that's part of the reason that we have to continue supporting Ukraine, because they are being invaded. They are our ally, and it doesn't.
They're not. They are a country that has lost its sovereignty. The USA is using them. Wall Street is using them as cannon fodder against Russia. And the people of the Russian-speaking regions declared independence from the fanatically anti-Russian government that was forced on them by a U.S. coup. And then the Ukrainian government, with U.S. support, started slaughtering them. And finally, after 8 years of these people being killed, Russia had no choice but to intervene and protect these people.
With Ukraine, it will never stop with Ukraine. Putin wants to take more and more and more land.
Oh, give me a break. Russia did everything they could to not intervene in Ukraine. The Ukrainians who were being killed wanted the people in Donbass wanted intervention in 2014. They waited for 8 years. 8 years they waited. I mean, this is ridiculous. Russia has did everything they could to avoid this war. The Communist Party wanted them to go in 2014. Russia is not going to invade Europe. Like, give me a break. Give me a break.
Support amending the Taiwan Relations Act to drop our strategic ambiguity towards defending the island militarily, not touching the one China policy outlined in the Shanghai Communique. So if Taiwan is invaded, I want to ensure that we've codified passive support to sell Taiwan weapons if Congress wills it.
Right. So she wants a war with China also, not just Russia. She wants a war with China. She wants to dump weapons onto Taiwan and this is, yeah.
So Trump just can't overrule it, or whoever the president is. That's in Congress's hands, and that we can militarily step in to defend Taiwan with naval fleets for interception and selling weapons. This is kind of like a 1-2 punch. Let's make sure that we have deterrence first.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Right. So she wants to antagonize China and the island of Taiwan that is part of China. Oh my God.
Always prioritize diplomatic solutions before any sort of intervention, but almost making Taiwan a porcupine that is difficult to invade, and then committing to step in to defend Taiwan from invasion.
Yeah. She is a war hawk, right? And she dresses it up in pro-Palestine, pro-Islamic statements or whatever. She is a neocon war hawk, like, and I don't know why all of a sudden it's trending. I saw Medea Benjamin and Max Blumenthal pointing this out. And I mean, it does need to be pointed out, but the issue is there is a system called globalism imperialism that is in a meltdown for economic reasons, rooted in the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And that system is desperate to reclaim parts of the world and destroy the new economy rising in Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela and everywhere else. And they are desperate to destroy countries like Russia and China that have broken out of their dominion as their system is failing. And we need to oppose that. Right? The real enemy of the American people is at home. It's Wall Street. It's the Pentagon. It's the big banks and corporations that are destroying the lives of the American people. That's our real enemy. Our real enemy is at home. Max exposed her. And our real enemy is at home. And we got to keep that in mind. And this becomes a very, very important thing to understand, because people don't get it. And that wokeification, you dress it up in woke, right? You dress it up in woke. Oh, they talk against racism. They talk about Palestine. But if they're on the side of the imperialists, none of that matters. None of that matters. And so, I see that people are discovering that she was a neocon. I saw her being a neocon and talking against Russia, and I saw that, early on, but I'm glad that others have caught up with us. And yeah, she is that. She is absolutely that. And, I don't know what more to say about it. I mean, that is what it is. I will say, where are the emergency demonstrations to oppose the war against Iran? We called a national day of action, but Trump is out there threatening to attack, right? And where are the action? So we're going to be in the streets tomorrow all over the country to oppose war with Iran. That's what we're going to do. We're going to be in the streets and, join us. Join the Center for Political Innovation. We're an organization that has a unique approach that is making a difference. So get involved. Join the Center for Political Innovation. I think there was something else I was going to touch on. I think there was one more thing before we do the roll call and I answer questions. Maybe I am not remembering that correctly, but I could swear there was one more thing. What was it? I could swear there was one more thing, but maybe there wasn't. Maybe that's it. We've been talking a lot. Last night I talked about the danger of war against Iran, and I'm going to be in the streets tomorrow, and we'll be in the streets all over the country to say no war with Iran, and I'm looking forward to it. And we do great work. Shout out to Irving. We got a great leaflet that Irving put together in New York, and we're doing great stuff, right? We are a good organization of people that is very dedicated to what we're doing. But anyway, all right. So listen, if you got a question for me to answer in the second half of the show, you can send via Buy Me a Coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. But right now we're going to do the roll call. And then I'll start answering questions. So names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? Ryan in Kansas City. Good to see you. Jenny in Cincinnati. John in Florida. Dude, the wheels are moving, Caleb, but go and try, my friend. Dude, they have build up dudes. Okay, Bendigo, Australia, David Fox, Gabby in Chicago, Patricia in Utah, LA, CA, Los Angeles, California, Cameron in New Hampshire, Miriam in Miami. Good to see you. Rose, for peace on the Korean Peninsula. Amen to that. Patch in Arizona. Good to see you. Samuel in the Far East. Good to see you, Samuel. Good to see you. Names and locations. Laney Peterson. Good to see you. And I received your question. You will be the first question answered. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. Anybody else want me to call them out as I see them? Names and locations. Anybody? Patch in Arizona. Good to see you, Patch. You're always here. Victoria, Australia. Barry McConnor in Beijing, China. Good to see you, Barry. Dan in LA. Join us in downtown LA tomorrow. Yes, they always do great work in LA. Our LA folks are like, they're out there every weekend. You know, this is going to be just like a normal weekend for them because there's not a weekend that goes by that they're not in the streets saying hands off Venezuela or calling out the Falun Gong for their anti-China hate. The LA folks are very awesome. Dan is a great guy and has a good group of people out there. I could start naming off names, Tim and Ishmael and Patrick, and it's a good group of people. Great folks. Hey, Dan, Kevin in Miami. I'm not going to say your name because it's a joke, but I'm glad you're in Columbus. That's clever. I almost said your name for a second, and I was like, wait, I don't think I'm going to say that. Salt Lake City, Justin Chambers. Good to see you. Good to see you, Justin. Yeah, we've got a great organization with CPI. So we've only got one question that's come in so far. It's Laney Peterson's question, which I will answer, but I need you all to go to buymeacoffee.com and send me some more questions. Give me something to talk about. So while I'm doing that, I am going to put on an optimistic, revolutionary song. You should have said it. Yeah. I'm going to put on an optimistic, revolutionary song from Cornelius Cardew. But please, somebody go ask me a question. Go to buymeacoffee.com, send a question. It would be appreciated. Somebody sent earlier today. I will throw this out, right? Somebody did just send me some coffees in the afternoon, and they said, no war against Iran. Iran is not our enemy. And I appreciate that. Great. I agree. And, it's very, very much appreciated. And that's great. And that was in the afternoon. And, I guess I'm responding to that as I received it. But so anyway, so send your questions, go to buymeacoffee.com and send your questions. And then while I'm waiting for you to send your questions, I'm going to put on a beautiful revolutionary optimistic song from Cornelius Cardew called British Working Class. So here we go.
British ruling class puffed up with arrogance, boasted that the sun shone on your vast empire. That sun is now eclipsed. British ruling class, we have got news for you. Your time has run out, you have got to go. Light is shining in the sky, heralding the dawn of a glorious new day. British ruling class, your revolutionary force to build a socialist land. British working class, you have a fine history. Fierce battles waged against a vicious enemy with grim determination. British working class aspires to revolution in the face of attempts to crush this aspiration of socialism in Britain. Light is shining in the sky, heralding the dawn of a glorious new day. British working class, your revolutionary force to build our socialist land. In the 1840s, Marx and Engels on our shores organized and hammered out the objective laws propelling history. Marxist-Leninist science is the guiding star, charting the course for the working class. Socialist revolution. Light is shining in the sky, heralding the dawn of a glorious new day. British working class, your revolutionary force to build our socialist land. Persisting in the face of every difficulty, in 1979 was formed our new party, a glorious victory. Rallying to this flag is the only way, workers, to usher in the bright new day of socialism in Britain. Light is shining in the sky, heralding the dawn of a glorious new day. British working class, your revolutionary force to build our socialist land.
I just saw something amazing on social media. It appears, and I'm just going to put this on, it appears the sailors on the USS Gerald Ford are trying to prevent an attack on Iran by sabotaging the sewage system of the ship. I find this, this is the clip.
From my sources in the Navy that sailors actually took undershirts and stuffed them into the toilets to cause them to back up.
What?
I know that the crew's very, very unhappy with being at sea now for what, 10 months? And before this is over, it will have been a year.
Wow. So the soldiers themselves don't want to fight this war and have actively sabotaged the ship. Let's hope that this is just the beginning. I know. Let's hope that this is just the beginning and that the soldiers refuse to attack Iran, because Iran is not our enemy. Let's hope that these soldiers say our real enemy is at home. And I mean, that is really inspiring news. And I hope that that's just the beginning. All right. Now, Lainey said, despite nonsense, I do want to see community radio stations thrive, even if it doesn't involve a takeover. Yeah, you know, WBAI, they have me on. It's a great opportunity to go on there, you know, but it's not controlled by us. There are other forces there. And that I just don't want people to get involved in the white whale of trying to take over community radio stations. That's all I was getting at. But I don't want people to, you know, to spend their lives trying to take over some institution rather than just going out and doing CPI. We just do it. That's what we do. We just do it. We just do it. And we do a great job because we did it. We went to Maduro's, you know, we had all of our members. All of our members were in New York City for our event, in New York, New Jersey area for our event that we did after they kidnapped Maduro. And so what did we do? You know, we went to the Manhattan Detention Center to demand that they free Maduro. And I will put that video on in a second. But yeah, if anyone else has any more questions, that would be great. And I will answer those questions. You can go buy me a coffee. But yeah, we went to the Manhattan. It was actually in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn detention facility where Maduro is being held. And we protested to free Maduro. And it was a great action that we did.
Guys, get out.
All right, this will be our corner.
The federal facility where Maduro is being held is right over there.
Maduro as a great example of an anti-colonial fighter. That's what we need to do. We are the Center for Political Innovation, and we're out here to say free Maduro, peace and trade with Venezuela, no new wars, no police state, hands off Venezuela, free Maduro. That's what we're out here to say.
Maduro is not our enemy.
Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. Maduro is not our enemy. We are here because there are multiple wars going on right now. We're tired of Ukraine intervention. We're tired of the genocide, killing innocent children in Palestine. It makes us cry at night. It makes us angry. We need to realize what about your own children? What about your own family? It's the same thing as Venezuela. It's going to be Iran. Canadá hasta la Patagonia, Chile. The Metropolitan Detention Center, where the hope of Latin America is being locked up right now. And let's make no bones about why Nicolas Maduro has been locked up. They tell us in American media, oh, Nicolas Maduro is a drug dealer. We know who the real drug dealers are in America. That's right. We know with the pharmaceutical companies who pushed opioids on American citizens.
There's a homeless crisis in our country. There's so much going on in the USA. Yeah, we're like looking at Venezuela. What does that have to do with us? Tell me. Nothing. You had to do America first. Trump is not doing America first. He promised that.
That's
is
right.
he doing that?
No.
He's not doing that. He is doing America last.
That's right.
He is not doing America first. Like he promised, right?
The reality is that Venezuela has helped its own people. The Venezuelan government has lifted millions of people out of poverty, and it's also helped the American people. When Americans in New York were cold, Venezuela provided heating oil for free to us Americans. Well, how do our authorities repay him?
It was Marco Rubio and his family who were pushing drugs in the United States. It was the cartels that the U.S. government and the CIA pays to sell drugs in America. Those are the real drug dealers. It's not Nicolas Maduro. The reason why they're going after Nicolas Maduro is because he brought jobs to Venezuela. He brought development to Venezuela. He brought education to Venezuela.
Frente a la prisión imperial donde está detenida y encarcelado el presidente de Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro. Nosotros aquí vamos a pronunciar una oración por la libertad del presidente Nicolás Maduro. Padre Celestial, por favor, cuida la integridad física del presidente Nicolás Maduro y de su esposa, la doctora Cilia Flores. El pueblo de Estados Unidos apoya tu libertad. Nosotros estamos en solidaridad con el pueblo bolivariano de Venezuela. Nosotros nos oponemos a los dictados imperiales.
If I can't have it, no one can. No, everybody can have natural resources and oil. Everybody can have a prosperous future. That's what we are trying to stand for here in the Center for Political Innovation. And that's what they don't want you to hear. They don't want you to win. They want you to be stuck, pessimistic, and hopeless. Yeah, dare to struggle, dare to win.
Dare to struggle, dare to win. Dare to struggle, dare to win.
To the CIA that have been smuggling drugs into this country for years, Nicolas Maduro is the leader of Venezuela, and he has led his people to try and be independent and stand up for justice. It's absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. We are out here to say free Maduro, and lock up the bankers, lock up Wall Street, and free Maduro, 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 free Maduro.
Libertad para Maduro. Free Maduro now. Free Maduro now.
We are here to stand with the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, who was taken unlawfully from his home, from his country, from his people. How is this a thing? How are we now kidnapping leaders of countries? Is this something we want to be known for in America? No. He knows we're in Ukraine and we're genociding children and women and people in Palestine, and we're not doing anything to stop it. Well, if it just starts with a few of us, then it starts with a few of us. And Nicholas, if you and your wife can hear us, we love you, and we are here from all around the United States because we support you, brother. You need to be out here now. This is inexcusable for the United States government. I am not happy with my government. I love the American people. I love what this country is about. But our government is a huge, huge disappointment. To many of us that have had to live our entire lives either poor or lower middle class, well, a handful of people have everything they want every single second of every day. It's not necessary. There's abundance for everyone, but we have to let it happen. God bless you, Maduro. We love you. Free Maduro now!
Free Maduro now! Free Maduro now!
Yep. That's us. That's us. We are the Center for Political Innovation. Yeah. This is the event we had the following day after that.
The land, the ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with our ballot in our hands? God gave the land to the people. First step, sound the blast for freedom, boys, and send it far and wide. March along to victory, for God is on our side. While the voice of nature thunders o'er the rising tide, God gave the land for the people. The land was God who made the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. Hark, the shout is swelling from the east and from the west. Why should we beg further when the landlords take the best? Make them pay their taxes or the land was meant the rest. The land was meant for the people. The land was God who gave the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. The banner has been raised on high to face the battle din. The army now is marching on the struggle to begin. We'll never cease our efforts till the victory we win. And the land is free for the people. The land was God who gave the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land for the people. Clear the way to liberty, the land must all be free. Winds will not falter and the smart fighting person speaks. Still the flag we love so well shall wave from sea to sea. For the land that is free for the people. The land was God who gave the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. Yeah.
There we go. That's us, folks. That's the Center for Political Innovation. And we are going to be in the streets tomorrow, and we are always going to be building the anti-imperialist country, the anti-imperialist movement this country urgently needs. Our poster of Ibrahim Traore is very, very cool. And, we're always looking for a way to do what we can do. I explained the method, right? We have a unique understanding of our role and how to do it. And So yeah, we are something very, very special. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. And, the audiobook of Mystical Stalinism will premiere on this channel on Sunday. The full audiobook. I finished reading it last night, so I cut the audio of it. So that'll premiere on this channel. And we're having house parties around the country for the Ides of March 15th, to connect with the different contacts we have in different cities and different areas. So that's important as well. We are doing some really important stuff, and I like what we're doing, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. I would love for you to be a part of it. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything really more that needs to be said. No other questions have come in. I feel like I should give you all one last chance to send me any questions you got. Last chance. Anyone? Last call, final call. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. Send a question. Last chance, right? We got a Rumble rant I can address as well. A couple Rumble rants to address from Hempcar. Yeah, final call here. So I guess I should put on something else, right? What should I put on? What should I put on? What should I put on? All right, I want to give you all one last chance to answer any questions. What should I put on? What should I put on? Well, what should I put on? I guess we'll put on the rally we did, the first rally we did to support Ibrahim Traore. We'll put that on.
Africa is not a mistake to be fixed. Africa is not a failed continent. Africa is the womb of the world, the cradle of civilization, the keeper of tomorrow's hope.
We know that Ibrahim Traore is the future of the African continent, that he represents the African wing of the global anti-imperialist movement.
We see that he's providing health care for his people, he's putting people first, he cares about the infrastructure, he's creating systems so that people can thrive instead of being in poverty like we have here in this country.
So we are here telling people, hands off Africa. The colonialists need to mind their business.
Why is he a dictator in the mind of the American media? Well, because he cares about the people of Burkina Faso.
Let me tell you what Ibrahim Traore is doing. He has got agricultural projects. Burkina Faso is having a farming boom right now because of this great African leader. He has just made a law that any woman who has a child, her medical bills are completely eliminated. It's free to go to the doctor and have a child in Burkina Faso, in this African country, because mothers and maternal care is so important.
You speak of democracy, yet uphold a global structure where the powerful few veto the dreams of the many. We will no longer whisper in rooms where we deserve to speak with full voice.
He's not a criminal, he's just being there for his people.
And if we could just follow his example.
The forces that are trying to overthrow Ibrahim Traore are the same forces that keep Americans poor. We want a prosperous America, not one that is so focused on maintaining the global economic system that our own citizens live in poverty.
He admires Gaddafi, he admires Patrice Lumumba, he admires all the great African leaders of the past, and we're here to say that American working people should look to Ibrahim Traore as the kind of leadership we need. A builder, a constructor, someone who lifts people out of poverty, someone who stands with the new economy rising in the world of the BRICS with Russia and China.
Donald Trump, look at this man. Try to be like him. Don't be like Zelensky. Don't be a worm. Be a president like Ibrahim Traore.
New economy emerging in the world and it's based on real wealth. What China's doing with the Belt and Road Initiative, what Russia is doing with the Eurasian Economic Union, what is happening in Latin America with Bolivarianism, with the axis of resistance. There's a whole new economy. And this fake Wall Street derivative rip-off usury economy of Wall Street in London, that economy is the past. And the only future America is going to have is joining this new economy.
Imagine what we could have in this world just by doing what he's doing for his people.
What we need to do is get the United States to link up with this new economy in the global south and in the east, right? They lifted 1 billion people out of poverty in 20 years, right? We could be part of that. Instead, Donald Trump, on orders from Benjamin Netanyahu and the international banks, is trying to destroy that new system. No, we don't need to destroy it. We need to join it.
We are a spiritual people. Before your cathedrals, our ancestors sang to the sky. Before your missionaries, we knew the language of the rivers and the laws of the sacred forest. Christianity came, Islam came, and we received them not as slaves but as seekers. But now we ask, will the church and the mosque stand with us, truly with us, when all people are displaced by greed, masked as globalization? Will your pulpits echo our cries or only repeat the songs of the powerful? Faith, too, must be decolonized. It must walk with the poor, not the privileged.
Well, we're having a really important event coming up on July 12th at the Midwest Convention. On there, we're going to have speakers talking about the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. We're going to have music. We're going to have traditional dancers from the former Soviet Union. It's just going to be really amazing in so many ways.
Anti-imperialist speakers, cultural performers.
Everyone there.
To the child whose only toy is a stone but who dreams of stars. You are the reason we fight. Do not believe the lie that your continent is cursed. You are the blessing. Do not envy foreign passports. Be proud of your name, your land, your roots. The world may not applaud you now, but the future will speak your name in honor.
So we need to be paying attention to him, we need to be supporting him, and we need to be in unity around the principles that he's advocating for as a leader.
And he is standing up to AFRICOM, standing up to NATO, saying, U.S. out, we want to develop Africa for African people, not for the bankers on Wall Street who are not only keeping the people of Africa poor, but keeping people in this very city poor. Why are there so many homeless people in America? Why is our infrastructure falling apart?
It's time that we hired the China Railway Company to build high-speed trains throughout the Midwest, connect Chicago to Washington, D.C. and to Los Angeles with high-speed railway. That's what we're talking about. We're saying it's time that we start having an education young people to be more confident and more physically fit. We need a government that invests in people, not a derivative rip-off government that makes profit from prison and war and death and destruction. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. And in Burkina Faso, this impoverished African country, they have such a government right now. They've got a builder, a man who believes that human beings are the source of real wealth in the world. And he is investing in his people, and they are raising up the population, raising up the life expectancy, raising up the living standards, raising up education, raising up health care, raising up access to a decent life. That's the kind of government we need here. A government of action that fights for working families.
And they're keeping you poor in this country as well. It's an absolute disgrace. We need leadership like Ibrahim Traore. We need programs that will allow people to raise children. We need people to have jobs and education in schools. We don't need to be starting war after war, bombing people in the Middle East, bombing people in Africa, funding terrorists in the Horn of Africa, and then banning people from coming here. It's absolutely ridiculous.
But it's going to be like nothing you've ever seen. That auditorium is going to be packed. It holds 500. We think we can fill it. It's going to be a great event. So I hope you join us July 12th.
Long live Ibrahim Traore! Long live Ibrahim Traore! Long live Ibrahim Traore! Long live Ibrahim Traore! It was actually really hectic trying to get the sign together.
It's not taking orders from anybody.
As you can see, it's kind of jerry-rigged up. We kind of didn't have the right stuff. We had to go back and forth to Home Depot 3 or 4 times, but it took us 2 hours to set up the banner, but the reaction's been pretty nice, right?
They want you to believe there's too many people in the world. Bullshit. Bullshit. We need more people because human beings, human labor power is the source of all wealth. We need a government that invests in people, provides people with jobs, provides people with health care, provides people with education, and builds and constructs Don't invest in bombs. Don't invest in prisons. Invest in people, human beings, and our creativity. We are the source, and we need a pro-people government. And that's what Ibrahim Traore is on the African continent. And that's why he's teaming up with China to build power plants. And that's why he's enabled thousands of Africans to become farmers and have their own orchards and have their own fields. Behind him, we have got whole fields of wealth. That's what he's about.
I do not come to declare war, I come to declare will. So we will not kneel to fear. We will not kneel to foreign banks. We will not kneel to outdated empires masquerading as friends. Africa is not asking for a seat at your table. We are building our own, a table where no child eats last, where no nation is silenced because it lacks nuclear arms, where justice is not filtered through the lens of race or history, but shared as breath is shared. This is our vision and this is our vow. Let the world hear it today and always. Africa will not kneel.
We need a government like Ibrahim Traore in America. That's what we need, a government of action that will fight for working families. So join us in Chicago, July 12th. Working families first, defeat the deep state for a new world of peace and innovation.
The most revolutionary thing to do, as Ibrahim Traore is showing us, is to build. Not destroy, but build. We need to build our way out of this global crisis. We can't bomb our way out of it, right? They're trying, but the more they try, the more trouble they get their system into. They need to join the new system that is already being built. And that's the message of our conference.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to win.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to win.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to win.
All righty. All righty. Well, we got the Rumble rants from Hempcar to answer, and then we got what do you call it? A buy me a coffee to answer. So Hempcar says, instead of just saying it's big pharma, I'd suggest it's the FBI and the CIA that sell drugs, not Maduro, by handing out these links and quotes. One is from an old Project Censored. Well, we know about, in the 1980s, it was revealed by Gary Webb that, the Contras were being enabled to sell drugs and introduce crack into the United States. That was happening. And that was because of the, that was to enable them to fight against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. And the death squads of El Salvador were also involved in the drug trade. And the paramilitaries of Colombia that were fighting the FARC were also involved in the drug trade. I mean, that's been revealed. And that also in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden was fighting the Soviets, and the Pakistani government and the American government enabled them to, grow heroin as a way to fight against the Soviet Union. So yeah, the CIA has been involved in the drug trade for years. No question about it. And thank you for sending those links in the chat. And he's, backing that up. The most significant case of narco-terrorism, yes, discovered, a friend of Gary Webb's. Yeah, Gary Webb is a journalist who was kind of a mainstream journalist who exposed this and ended up dead. It's kind of a famous case where he, really, he had video of CIA people, loading planes with drugs. It was pretty blatant, and he ended up, dying under rather mysterious circumstances. You can read about Gary Webb. Many people believe what happened to Gary Webb was an assassination. But yeah, the drug problem in Central America, you think about what's the body count of the drug gangs, all of that. What's the body count? Since the 80s, well, it started with the USA, kind of facilitating those organizations and, et cetera. We did receive a buy me a coffee, and someone asked me to give my opinion of another person who we generally try to refrain from talking about on this channel. Just because, it's not really productive, and, there's just not much to say. Occasionally you might hear some reference or something, but we just try to refrain from talking about that person in general. That person is not friendly, and that person was friendly to us at one point, but is not friendly, and has been involved in doing some pretty nasty things to me and other people. And so we just try to refrain from discussing them. And, and that is generally, look, we talk about PSL and the negative role they're playing in the movement, and we talk about different groups, but that person's not an activist. That person is a social media personality. And, I believe that person has been boosted. I was around for a long time before that person, and that person was boosted, as kind of a fake version of me, designed to, I mean, that person, first of all, many people have met that person. That person's not genuine. I met this person and he's not genuine. He's not sincere. He doesn't know anything about anything. He's not sincere. And, we were friendly. We never wanted to do him any harm or anything. We always were just friendly. And then he was involved in some very vicious character assassination against me. That leads us to believe that he is, he's probably connected to darker and more sinister forces, because it wouldn't make sense, right? And that's the thing, if people are sincere, they wouldn't feel a need to target and defame and smear people who say have roughly the same opinion. And that the way he and his bot armies have targeted us leads us to believe that there are more sinister forces involved with this person. And I could go into even more detail, but that's not important, right? It's just not important, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter, right? We're on here to do our own stuff, and it's not Ben Norton. And Ben Norton is a whole another case. But there's too much of this influencer stuff. I am not trying to build a social media brand. I'm trying to build a movement. We have plenty of podcasts. We got plenty of social media, but none of this makes any sense if you're not involved in actual organizing. And that's how I started out the Khrushchevism book. I said, none of this is designed for you to just read it and be intellectually stimulated. The point is to be involved in the struggle. And that's what my first opening rant was about, we're trying to intervene. So, if somebody else says similar stuff to us on social media, they make similar points that we make. Okay, that's great, and we'll work with them, and if they want to promote our stuff, we hosted that person at one of our events once, but that person, unfortunately, it's a fandom thing, and it's just not worth our time. It's just not worth our time. And, we got better stuff to do, and I'm not here to talk trash about anybody. And, it doesn't help. And, again, if people weren't hostile to us, our approach is generally not to fight with people. That is our approach. But the problem with social media, right? These people have no idea what an organization is. They have no idea how to organize, right? But they are desperate for likes and clicks and shares. And everyone who watches me, I guess they see that as a view or a like that they could have. So it is what it is. And I just, it's just not even really worth discussing any further tonight. And it's just, we're not in a competitive game. We're focused on getting to the masses and carrying out anti-imperialist operations. And we don't want to recruit the small corner of the internet that agrees with this message already. We want to recruit people who would never go looking for this message. That's what we want to do. And we have done that, right? We have done that. We have won over people who would never have gone looking for this message. We have, you look at who our members are, we recruit real Americans, real people, not leftist activists, not weird intellectuals, but we recruit real people because we have a message and we engage with people and we do real outreach. And we're in the process of setting up shop in neighborhoods. We're doing something real here. And people on the internet that talk trash about us and feel that in order to expand their own platform, they have to defame us, they have to harass us. That's too bad that they feel that way, but they're in a different league. They're in a different league. And, part of the internet culture, I'll just throw this out there. Part of the internet culture is that, you can't really have an alliance with anybody. Everyone's competitive with you, but if you attack somebody, you have to then play the victim at the same time. And it's just toxic. And it's whether it's BreadTube that went after us first, and we fought BreadTube, and then there was an anti-BreadTube that was created, modeled on us fighting BreadTube, that then also went after us. And that's the game, right? It's a game, right? The establishment first, they had BreadTube target us and tell everyone I was a Nazi. I'm just a Nazi pretending to be a communist, and I'm all these awful things. And then they created people who sounded like us and had them target us, right? It's just a game that they play. I've been dealing with this for years, right? And it's just whatever. And I don't, I will say that, the person who sent the coffee, I'm glad you sent the coffee. I generally, if people come into the chat and mention that person's name or certain other people, I just remove them, so just know that, right? If you're watching, right? We have no interest whatsoever in any of this, right? They have said and done unforgivable things to us that, number one, like, on the one hand, right, should never be done to anybody, right? And anyone who engaged in the kind of behavior that they've subjected us to, I would, if anyone in CPI were to ever do the kind of things that they have done to us, to anybody, we would expel them from the group. Serious political people don't act this way. The fact that these people continue to just go into the gutter with childish personal attacks and, gutter level, I wouldn't be in an organization with people that engaged in that kind of behavior if you paid me, right? And if anybody in CPI were to do the kind of things that they have done to me and my family members, and harmed, we wouldn't even allow them in the group, right? And we're not playing the victim and all that, but these are not good people, and they're not serious, and they're not sincere. And there are probably good people who have gotten caught up in their stuff. And there are people that were around CPI who didn't get it, and good riddance. We had some people that, that left, and they were never really members. There was somebody, one of our members was doing outreach in a certain state the other day, and they ran into someone who identified as a former member of CPI, who now is hanging out with some of these characters, I guess, right? Is caught up in their internet fandom. And I heard the name. I said, I've never heard that name before. And I checked the records. This person had joined on paper, but they had never once been to one meetup. They had never gotten involved in any of the activities they had done. And now they're in this other space. Well, I mean, CPI, I appreciate everyone who joins on the internet. I really do. But we're building a real organization here, and so this person who, I guess for a while they were watching me, and then they decided to watch this other person. Okay. All right. Well, I don't feel like that's a big loss, because I didn't even recognize the name when I heard who this person was. And it's like, they said they used to be with us, but I think that meant they were watching my YouTube channel, and now they're watching this other person's YouTube channel. So they're with their organization. So whatever, not my concern. And we just don't, tomorrow we're going to be in the streets in many, many different cities saying no war with Iran. These other people, they've got these huge platforms. They don't do anything. And really the Uhuru case, that right there tells you how insincere these people are. A black socialist group was charged with being agents of another country, right? Or being agents of Russia for their speech, right? It was a really big threat on anyone who says pro-Russia stuff, right? Anyone who supports Russia and Ukraine, basically. They were trying to throw 3 black activists in prison for 15 years, or 3 activists in prison for 15 years for their speech. And we in CPI saw how dangerous that was. We did everything we could to support them, everything, right? And we went to their court dates, we raised money, we organized a UN press conference. These people didn't do anything for them. And one of them actually told me on the phone he didn't support them because they were competition, right? And he actually said to me on the phone he didn't support them, right? They're not serious people, right? Counting clicks and growing egos. That's all they're doing. And they're not worth our attention, because that's what these people want. They want attention. So, generally, I appreciate the buy me a coffee that was sent by someone anonymously. I appreciate it. But generally, if people start talking about them in the chat, I start removing them immediately. And these are just toxic people that engage in childish behavior that nobody should want to work with such people. And, I wouldn't, if they applied to join CPI tomorrow, I would say they're not welcome. Right. And people who quit, we allow dual membership, and we've always allowed dual membership in any organization. But our policy now is that, if someone has worked with them in the past or did work with them and wants to work with us, that's fine. But if somebody quit CPI, right, to join them, we don't want them. right? And that is a fair policy. They were telling people that they had to stop associating with us, and the people who did, good riddance. We don't want you. And anybody who would leave this organization because they were ordered to by that organization, we have no ban on dual membership. Anyone who would do that, we don't want. If you were with them for a while and you want to come over to us, or you still got one foot in that world but you want to be with us, that's one thing. But if you quit our organization to join them, what that says to us is you don't appreciate, number one, you don't appreciate what CPI is about. And number two, you have no loyalty to the group, because the things that were said about CPI were said about you, right? And clearly, you have no self-respect. Things that I will not repeat on here, things that are absolutely abominable, have been said about our organization by these people. They have said abominable, awful things. We had people who literally joined a group that said that about them, not about me personally, but about them. And if you're the kind of person, you feel so little loyalty to CPI, you would join a group that talked that way. You would leave CPI for a group that belittled you and spoke about you. You have no self-respect and you don't belong in this organization. Right. And what was so sad is that, it was just, that certain people are just not capable of being activists. Jesus in the Bible, he said, straight is the gate and narrow is the way. It's not for everybody. We would like to have a message that hits home with everybody, and we would like to be out of the movement to the masses, but we can't pretend that everyone's capable of being revolutionary. And some of the stuff that was said by people who, again, were useless and did not do any activism, but were dues-paying CPI members who suddenly wanted to join with these people. Some of the stuff they said was absolutely ridiculous. One of the things that was said was, well, Caleb, CPI is all about your ego. It's all about my ego. And I said, really? I said, have you talked to the Uhuru movement about that? Have you talked to them? Is that all about my ego? Right? Did you notice that we raised their case, all over the world? We did more than any other organization to support a group that doesn't even share our politics. It's all about our ego. And what is this group these people you're joining? They don't even do anything but have social media presence. So you're saying it's all about my ego, really? Right. And it's just really sad, but certain people just don't understand that the internet isn't real, and the internet is not real. It's not. It's useful. It's a method of communication. That's why I'm on here every night, is communicating. The internet's not real. And certain people, they just couldn't get out of their heads. Well, so-and-so looks really cool on the internet. Okay. Well, they're assholes, and they're not sincere, and they're terrified of their fans. Let me tell you that. The time that I met these people, I was blown away by how much they hate their own members. I love CPI members. Gabby's in the chat. Love Gabby, right? John, right? Noah. I love CPI members. If I could hang out with CPI members all the time, I would do it. I absolutely love every member of our group. These people hate and are terrified of their members because they view their members as suckers, because they're con artists and they're not sincere, right? And that became very clear. When I was with these people, they are absolutely terrified of their fans, because their fans, they don't respect them. They view their fans as idiots. Why would they, as suckers, as fools? I love my fans. And you guys aren't fans. I love my comrades. I love people who join CPI and get involved in doing all this work. We're in this together. We're not, I am actually an organizer. They are social media influencers and cyberbully punks. And that's all there is to say about it. So I appreciate the question, because it was sent as a buy me a coffee. And, but generally just be aware, if people bring them up in the chat, they get removed. And I know some people may bring these people up innocently, and that's fine, but just don't do it again. And please don't send that question again. All right. Very good. All right. Okay, folks. Well, listen, it's late. I'm going to say goodnight, because tomorrow's going to be a big day. So yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people
of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.